Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plots, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Tomatoes get big and have to have support. Today we're going to look at several ways to hold them up. Also, certain plants help each other grow and keep away bugs. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Peter Richards. Peter is our local garden expert. All right, Peter, it's warming up. People are anxious to get their vegetables into the ground. Of course, tomatoes are high on everybody's list to grow, right?
Yeah, no, they're definitely the queen of the garden.
Yes. So let's show the folks a few ways you can support your tomato growth.
Yes. Okay, so the traditional way that people think, oh, support tomatoes is tomato cages. Just like this one. This is a large tomato cage. You can get them even smaller than this, but they don't really support tomatoes.
All right.
They're really good for peppers, but if you look here, we have a poor tomato plant.
That's a good example.
Yeah, and you notice it knocked the cage right over. There's no support here. It's all over the ground. It's very, there's lots of fungus as a result because the water was able to splash up even down at the end where it was laying on the ground, so it just didn't work. I don't recommend using regular tomato cages.
Okay.
So I said for peppers, they work really good because the peppers stay smaller, but not for tomatoes.
So for peppers and not tomatoes. All
Right.
Gotcha.
Okay, now, if we look here at this next one, this is also a tomato cage, but this is much heftier and a lot bigger.
Yes, sturdier.
Yeah, so what I did here was I took 4 pieces of cattle panel and I wired them together in a couple places, so it created a square. And with cattle panel, because it's in the grid, I cut it so that there were spikes on the bottom and just kind of put the spikes in.
Okay.
And it holds up really good. You can tell that
Sturdy.
it holds the tomato plant up, keeps it all off the ground. This would work really good for a determinate tomato plant.
Ah, okay.
But if you have an indeterminate tomato plants and your tomato plants grow a lot vegetatively through the year, this might end up actually being too small. You can see that it started to come out the top here. When we're taping this, we're at the end of the year, so it's not a big deal. But you know, if it grew much more than this, it's going to go right back down to the ground again.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you this. So let's
Yeah.
tell the folks again about determinate and indeterminate tomatoes. What's the difference?
So determinate tomatoes will grow up to a certain point, and then they basically stop growing. And they put on all their fruit at once, which can be something you want. So that's the kind of tomato plant that commercial growers grow because you can go through and you can pick the field a couple times and you're done. Indeterminate tomato plants are tomato plants that just keep growing and growing and growing until they get killed by frost or something else. And so a lot of times home gardeners like those because you can pick them all through the year and they keep going all year long. And a little secret on the determinate or the indeterminate tomato plants. So if you have an end like this right here, so this is the end of a vine, if you pinch off the end right there, that will stop the growth. Now, it will try and grow somewhere else with the sucker, but you've stopped that branch.
Got it.
And so that takes care of the growth there. So you can kind of control it a little bit.
Good tip. Good tip.
So let's move on here to the Florida weave.
All right.
And this is another way that you can support your tomatoes. As the tomatoes grow, as they get up about 8 inches, 10 inches above the previous string you've put in, you just put a string from one post to another and back again. So you just kind of, you're holding them up as they grow. Now, you can see that there is a problem here, and that is that they all tended to fall this way this year. And so if you have more than a couple tomato plants, I'd recommend that you put a stake maybe every 2 tomato plants and then weave it there. So that way they can't fall too far at once. This is a great method. Once again, might work a little better on indeterminate plants because you do have a limited amount of height before you run out of stake. It's good. It can be difficult because it's hard to get the fungicide in, and it's hard to because the tomatoes tend to get very dense in the middle. But it keeps your fruit off the ground, it keeps the tomatoes off the ground, it keeps the tomatoes compact so they're really in a very narrow line.
Okay. And that's what
so-
you want, yeah.
Yeah, and you can
That's what
keep
you
your
want.
tomato plants. You can put more tomato plants in because you could put a line of tomatoes here, and really you only need 3 foot over. You could put another line of tomatoes and still get in between them
Okay.
to work them during the year.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
It also makes it easier to harvest your tomatoes
Yep.
as well.
Yep. Okay, so this is the first time I've tried this method, and what this is just a horizontal cattle panel.
Okay.
The tomato plants grow up through the cattle panel, and then as they get heavy, they fall back down on it, but it keeps them off the ground.
All right.
And
Just
so,
lay right across.
yeah.
Okay.
And so this is the first time I've done this this method, but I did it about 24 inches off the ground. If I did it again, I would probably take it down to about 18 inches off the ground.
Okay.
Reason being that the tomato plants started to fall over before they got up through the cattle panel.
Right. Gotcha.
I've been pretty pleased with this.
So you like this?
I
Okay.
kind of like this, yeah.
method. Okay.
It takes a lot of space. That's its downside, really, is because this is about a 4 foot by 4 foot space for 2 tomato plants, which, compared to Florida
Yeah.
weed, is quite a bit of space.
Yeah.
But it was very easy to go in and treat with fungicide
Okay.
because I could spray above and then I could
Gotcha.
spray underneath. The benefit kind of is that the bottom part of the plant, the leaves, got blighted and fell off. And so it made it so all the vegetative growth was right here on
Gotcha.
the level. This, just like the other ones, is made out of cattle panel, which you
panel.
can get at your local big box hardware store or at your farm supply store. You have to have pretty heavy, probably bolt cutters
Oh,
to cut it.
okay.
But if you have those, it's really easy to do. And then
And
T-posts,
Okay.
which are easy to find and they're fairly cheap. And so that's pretty easy. But that's the basis of all of these.
Okay.
So then,
All right. We'll look at the next one.
yep. So this next one here, this is a single stake per tomato plant. And what you do is, as the tomato plant grows, you use some sort of soft fabric. In this case, I cut up an old bed sheet and you tie it up towards the stake.
Okay.
It's pretty good. It has, I think its big weakness is that you end up with a whole bunch of growth
That's a lot
concentrated
of
in
growth.
one spot.
It sure is.
And so that
Yeah.
kind of invites the diseases and the blights to get it.
So how about treating it with the fungicide? Was it easy for you to do so?
Yes
'cause
and
it
no.
is
You can
bunched
get all the
there.
way around it pretty
Yeah.
easy, but you're sticking your wand in, and
Gotcha.
you're not sure if you get all of it. But as you can see, this right here, this would be a branch that I'd come back in here and tie it up so it's about that far away,
Okay.
and just kind of keep gathering it up as it goes. Now, if you have an indeterminate tomato plant, it can get really tall.
Yes.
Which, if you've noticed here, this is actually this pipe was made by Tom Mashur,
Yeah.
who's shown us how to use it in the past. But you can continue now to it can go up.
Yeah.
You got about 10 feet that you could continue to gather it up. Now it's close to the end of the season when
Yeah.
we're taping this, so I've just kind of let it go.
Okay.
But you can
Yeah, but that's how
continue
you
to
do it. Yeah.
continue to go. Okay.
Ooh, okay.
Now this last one, and this one is actually my favorite.
It's your favorite. Huh?
Now it's not my favorite because it's easy, because this one actually takes a fair amount of work. And what this is when the tomato plants were little, I cut them or I pruned them so that I only had 2 or 3 main branches.
Okay.
And then I wrapped them around string that was attached to this top cross post up here. And so as they continue to grow, I wrapped them. And then the other thing you have to do is
a lot of work.
you have to cut off all the suckers as they grow. So, for instance, this right here is a sucker, and you can tell it's a sucker because there's a leaf right here, and it has grown out between the main stem and the leaf.
Right.
So you cut those off. Best place to get it is when they're really little, like this right here.
Yeah.
And then you can just
those
take it
off.
off with your thumbnail and it's good to go. But something I really like about this, and you can see that there's not a lot of blight
It's not.
on this plant.
It is not.
And the reason is you cut the leaves off as you go. So
Okay.
every week or so you come out and you cut off the bottom 3 leaves of each vine. And so what happens is before the blight has a chance to get established, you've cut it off the plant.
Which is so good.
Yeah. And
So
so,
good, because you don't have to worry about it spreading that way.
right,
Yeah,
it doesn't
that's so
spread.
good.
You don't. I've grown plants like this where I've maybe sprayed them twice in the whole year, and I don't have any
nothing.
blight on them, or at least not till the very end when they slow down.
Right.
When they slow down, then the blight starts to catch up with it.
Sure.
But yeah, so I really like this because if you're going to go organic, in my opinion, this is
This is
the
it.
only way to do it, and you can do it. And your tomato plants will last longer than mid-July.
Wow.
So,
So it's good to get the fungicide on it, and it's also good to harvest.
Yeah, it's easy to harvest. Now
Easy to harvest.
you can see that the tomato plants have gotten up close to the top.
Yeah, pretty close.
I made this really tall. You don't have to make it that tall. You can make it a little bit
How
shorter.
tall is it?
It's probably about 9 feet.
Okay.
But you could make it a little shorter if you wanted to. But you should come up with a way as the tomato plants grow, when they get to the top, have extra string up there
Okay.
and kind of start moving them down the board. And so you'll have vine at the bottom, and then they'll go up.
Gotcha.
And as you continue to prune them, they continue to grow.
Any special type of string that folks
I've
need
used
to be concerned about? Or?
I've used several different kinds of string. The cheapest stuff I can get
Okay,
at the
sure,
store. I would probably stay away from a cotton or maybe another organic string. The reason being that it may not last the season.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be out in the weather.
Right. Some of the
gotcha.
cheaper, like the thin ropes I've used, will last about 2 years, and then what'll happen is they'll start breaking.
Okay.
And so it'll break, and you'll come out and your tomato plant will be on the ground and you'll have to string it back up. So I recommend new string every year.
New string every year.
But this is thin nylon twine. It'll hold up just fine this year. It's cheap.
Okay.
Throw it away. Get new stuff this year.
Get new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I like this method too. This is pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, and this I learned from doing hydroponics,
Hydroponics.
because this is how they do
Yeah,
it in the
yeah.
hydroponic greenhouses.
How about that?
Yep.
All right. Well, Peter, it's good information. We appreciate the demonstration.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. So we have a great example of spring dead spot. The thing about spring dead spot is this: it actually starts in the fall of the year. If we have a wet fall, you're most likely going to have spring dead spot in your warm season grasses. It is a fungal disease. As you can see, this area is bleached out, but the other grasses around it are actually starting to transition through the green period. How do you control spring dead spot? Well, you have to use a fungicide. I want you to read and follow the label on that fungicide. It is going to be a Lund fungicide. There's a ready to use, and there's also a liquid concentrate that you can put in a 2 or 3 gallon container. So again, read and follow the label. If you just leave it alone and don't treat it, it just gets worse. It's probably going to be multiple applications, but in the meantime, make sure that you're getting your soil tested and you're fertilizing according to your soil test analysis. All right, Tanya, let's talk a little bit about companion planting. And I get a lot of questions about companion planting. So first of all, what is it?
Companion planting simply means that you're planting 2 different crops near each other, and you're trying to influence pest pressure, maybe reduce insects, or get better yields, better tasting fruit, something
Yeah.
like that.
Okay. Now, can you give us some examples? Because that's what folks want to know.
Right.
Some good examples.
Well, companion planting, the most famous example is from Native American history. Many, many years ago, the Native Americans figured out that they could grow vegetables in a companion planting setting and get good results, and they called it the 3 sisters. So they would grow corn, beans, and squash together. The corn would provide support for the beans to climb, and the squash at the bottom of the plant would provide shade and weed suppression for the plants, and would help with moisture loss prevention. And then the prickles on the squash would keep the raccoons out of the corn.
Right.
And also, because those beans fix atmospheric nitrogen, it provided a nitrogen source for the corn, and corn's a heavy feeder, so they really had this thing figured out.
So how can a home gardener know which combinations to try? Because of course they wouldn't want to try this.
Right. Well, unfortunately, if you just simply go on the internet and type in companion planting, you're going to get a whole bunch of information, and maybe some of it's not right. Actually, a lot of it may not be right.
Good.
There were a lot of lists circulated through the 1960s and 70s, and it's like, this plant likes this other plant and dislikes this plant.
Okay.
And if you see a list like that, it's most of it has been debunked by research
Okay.
in the last 3 decades. So those aren't reliable, but there have been a few combinations that have kind of withstood the scrutiny of the research. So one of those is basil and tomatoes. Now, basil and tomatoes taste great together on the plate, and they also are really good to plant together in the garden. For some reason, basil, when planted with tomato, will give you better yield in your tomato plants, and you could also get better tasting fruit.
Okay.
And the basil will keep away thrips and help control the hornworms. Another one you can try, same kind of concept as the Three Sisters, is planting your potatoes with your beans or peas, because potatoes like a lot of nitrogen, and the beans and peas fix the nitrogen and put it back into the soil for the potatoes. And then also onions. The aroma of the onions kind of can keep away some insects, and so one of those is onions and carrots.
Right.
If you put onions and carrots together, the onion can kind of keep away the carrot fly.
Sure. I've heard that one. You heard some of those before too?
Yes, I've heard of some of those, but that's a new one on me. The carrot fly with the onions and carrots. That's a new one.
That's good stuff. All right, but this is one we always hear about though. What about planting those marigolds?
Yes,
So what about that?
That's probably the most common one that people will try. And you know, marigolds can get rid of nematodes, soil nematodes in your garden. However, if you really have a nematode problem that you're trying to use marigolds to control, it's better to plant your marigolds a season or two before. So that they can kind of have time to get rid of the nematodes. So you get the best results not with a true companion planting. So if you plant them at the same time as the rest of the crops in your garden, you're not going to get as good a control. So it's not a true companion plant to get the best results. Now, if you want to try that, there's some cultivars that work better for that, like Nema Gold, Golden Guardian, things that have Nema in the title.
Right.
Are
That gives you an
usually
idea of what it controls.
marigolds. Yeah, that'll take care of the nematode problems. And you know, there's been a study with marigolds thinking that they could ward off some insect pests.
I was going to ask you about that. Okay.
Yeah, so some researchers planted green beans, some next to marigolds and some not next to marigolds, to see if they could control the Mexican bean beetle. As it turns out, the beans near the marigolds had fewer bean beetles, but they also produced fewer green beans, because the marigolds can exude a chemical to inhibit the growth of other plants near them. It's kind of like an allelopathic situation. So marigolds can try to reduce competition by stunting other plants' growth, and that's what it did with the beans. So you kind of have to be careful, you know, when you're going to use marigolds. So yes, it did control the beetle, but you didn't get the result that you wanted.
Who tell you that's good? I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but you need to plant the marigolds again, what, a couple of seasons before?
Before to get the nematode control, to you know, really get the nematodes out of there.
How about that? Yeah, because folks are running out now to the stores, nurseries, big box stores, to plant the marigolds.
Yeah.
Yeah, thinking that if I plant them this season, it'll get rid of all the bugs for this season.
But maybe not.
But maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they'll be in good shape 2 years
Yeah,
from
2
now.
years from now. How about that, though? That's good stuff. Okay. Is there a big picture idea for the home gardener regarding companion planting?
Yes, I'd say the big picture with companion planting is you want to think polyculture instead of monoculture. So poly just means many.
Right.
So you can kind of confuse your insects when they're flying by. They're trying to find their favorite host plant.
Right.
And if you have kind of a jumble of stuff out there, you've got things mixed together instead of just everything in nice, neat little sections or a grid or a row. If you've got things mixed up that has different aromas, different bloom times, different ripening times, you can kind of confuse, or they'll maybe miss or overlook their favorite host plant. And I've successfully hidden parsley in my garden from caterpillars by putting it in the middle of a whole bunch of other things and making it a little bit harder for the caterpillars to find. So
it actually worked out pretty good for you.
yeah, so think polyculture instead of monoculture. And then the other thing you can do is plant lots of flowers, which I always love to plant flowers anyway. And you don't even have to plant the flowers right next to your garden. They can be a little just in the vicinity. And we call these insectaries. And so what an insectary is It's like a nursery for your beneficial insects.
Okay.
So you want beneficial insects in your garden because things like ladybugs and lacewings kill your aphids and keep your vegetables, a lower insect pressure. So you want to keep those things around. And the way you can do that, because they have wings and they can fly off if there's no aphids to eat. Sure. But if you have a whole bunch of different flowering plants nearby, then they can go there and they can, pollinate and they can kind of munch on stuff there. It's a place for them to live until you have a pest problem, and then they'll fly over there and take care of those and come back to your flowers. It's also good just to attract bees and pollinators to your garden.
Sure. Wow. Tanya, it's good stuff. We appreciate that good information. Thank you much.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, the daffodils and the tulips have all finished blooming, but you can see there are seed heads left. Well, if you want it to be more attractive while you're waiting for the foliage to die down to enrich the bulbs for the next year's bloom, you can cut them. And so I'm going to cut down these. You notice you don't want them to go to seed. So you want to cut the seed heads off because you want the energy to go down into the bulb to renew the bulb and not to go to seed. And we'll just keep going and get rid of all of these seed heads. But it is important to leave the foliage to die down naturally so it is able to put energy back into the bulb so that they can bloom again. Now all the seed heads are gone, so the plants can concentrate their energy on enriching the bulbs so that it'll bloom next year. And doesn't it look a lot nicer than seeing all those seed heads?
So here's our first viewer email. What is this plant? It is very happy in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. This is Lisa on Facebook. I like that. It is very happy. Nice picture there, Lisa. So, Dylan, what do you think that is? I think you might know this one.
It makes me want to sneeze.
Yeah. All right.
Because it's ragweed.
It's ragweed, yeah.
And that's what causes hay fever in the fall for everybody. Yeah, it's ragweed.
But it looks so good.
Well, of course
so
it
happy.
does.
Yeah,
it's a weed in this area.
Right.
So, in fact, for a large part of the United States, is a weed, native weed. So, yeah.
Yeah, you see it pretty much all around
Everywhere.
the landscape here, side of the road. Yeah, I've seen it out in fields. Yeah, you see it everywhere.
Don't have me sneezing. Don't have me sneezing all the time, man. I be doing it, man.
It's the ragweed.
That ragweed have me going there.
So it is nice and happy there. So thank you for that, Lisa. We appreciate
Look
that.
good that on it.
It's definitely nice and happy. All right, here's our next viewer email. What do you think about getting seed from the grocery store to plant? I'm not talking about the packs of seeds. I'm talking about the bags of beans and corn and things you can buy by the pound to cook. Can I also use seeds from tomatoes, butternuts, pumpkins, sweet potatoes, and potatoes? Will seeds in fruit and dry packages from the grocery store grow and come back true and edible? I've got seed from kiwi and planted them, and they have come up and grown, and we ate them. This is Roger from Yadkin, North Carolina. So interesting question, right?
Very interesting.
Interesting question. They want to get some seeds. So let's look at the first one. So can I also use seeds from tomatoes, butternut, pumpkins, sweet potatoes, and potatoes? So what do you think, Joy?
I'd say yes.
Okay.
The one thing you got to remember, a lot of the fruit that you're getting from the store is a hybrid. So the seed that comes from it will not be exactly the plant that you had before.
So not true to form.
Yeah, it's not true.
Okay.
But the potatoes, in sweet potatoes, they sometimes put some kind of retardant gas or something in them that causes them to not produce eyes.
Okay, right.
So that I would just wait and see if they started producing eyes. And if they did, then you can plant them. But if they don't, that's because it's purposely done so they don't produce eyes.
Okay. Booker,
like seed from hybrid, they don't come true from that and stuff in there. But before I do that, put them in my yard, I mean garden, I'll try to plant them in some wet paper towel and just kind of see what happens. See
they germinate?
See where they germinate and everything before I go out there and sow lots of them into my garden and everything. I just look at them and see if they don't come true. Are they going to germinate? Right. And then so I would try that first and see what happens.
All right. Yeah,
It'd be
so
easy to do with beans.
yeah, and I was about to
Beans.
mention you can do that with
Corn.
beans.
Beans,
Yeah, it's gonna be
just see
easy
what
enough,
happens.
to
Did
be
it
able to
come?
do that.
Mhm.
Yeah, so tomatoes, I would say, peppers, I would say, and your beans and peas. Yeah, I would definitely give that a shot.
Get a shot and see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely do that.
Even
And
the
it-
butternut squash would
Yeah.
be all right.
I would give it a shot. And something else, Roger, that I would do. This is gardening. I would experiment. I would just try it.
Yeah.
We all try, a lot of seeds and things like that at home. Give it a shot and just see
Yeah.
what happens.
Just see what
Because
happens. Yeah.
he already tried it with the kiwi.
Yeah.
It worked.
It worked,
worked.
yeah.
Right. So I would encourage you, Roger, just go ahead and try it. Yeah, give it a shot. But we know that the success rate for things like tomatoes and peppers and beans may be a little higher, but I would just give it a shot.
Yeah, they say can't hurt nothing.
No,
see,
we're all, I mean, everybody's at home, has been at home, so, just
Try it.
try something.
Try it, Roger. And we appreciate that question. But it's a good question.
Very good.
Question. Okay. All right, so Brooke and Joel, that was fun.
It was good.
enjoyed that.
That's fine.
Yeah,
That was good.
enjoyed that.
Thank
man.
y'all much.
Good
Thank y'all much.
questions.
Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is familyplot@wkno.org, and the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for joining us. If you want to learn more about anything we talked about today, head on over to familyplotgarden.com. We have over 1,000 videos to help you make your garden the best that it can be. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.